Yeah, so Lord, we thank you for this day, and thanks that we can all be together in this effort this morning. And so as we head towards the overflow, I don't know about tents and whether people are there or whether they've been moved on, and we just ask you to guide our steps. You'd prepare us for those that you want us to meet and that need a word of encouragement or just need some fellowship today. Father, help us to be keenly aware of the opportunities you're laying before us. Help us to project Jesus in our smile and in our handshake and in our conversation. And Lord, we just pray too that there'd be a good opportunity for some good footage for Kevin's podcast. That you give Bill wisdom, and that it would just be a good morning together. We thank you for the privilege to be in the kingdom and to be your ambassadors today. Thanks for Peterborough, and thanks for the work you're doing underground here in people's hearts. And we just pray that the harvest would come. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 So on our trip to Peterborough, Bill Riley and myself were sitting in the back of Scott Cooper's pickup truck, and you heard him praying from his truck as he went out on the streets of Peterborough with his ministry of street-level advocacy. I'm Kevin Rogers, and Bill Riley is the man behind the camera, the man behind the scenes with Sidewalk, Skyline podcast. And so on today's episode, we're going to give you some insights from what we saw as we followed Scott and his team around on the streets of Peterborough. I will warn you that as we talk with some of the people on the streets, there's some colorful language, and if you have people that you don't want to hear colorful language, then maybe don't have them listen to this episode. But the other thing I would say is this is a very visual episode where we're seeing a lot of things on the street. So we'll have the link in the sidewalkskylinepodcast.com website, and also if you download the audio on any of the podcast platforms in the show notes, it'll give you the link to YouTube so that you can watch this episode. But if you're like me and listen to most of your podcasts in the car or on a treadmill or something like that, then what you're hearing, I'm sure, will give you an image in your mind of what's going on. But there's nothing like being there, eh, Bill?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's salient.
Yeah. So this first segment, we're going to talk to Joe. Joe is this Aboriginal guy in a wheelchair.
Why was he in a wheelchair, Kevin?
Well, Joe had a snowplow accident where a snowplow ran into him.
Yeah.
And he was dragged down the street a long way. And anyways, he's a pretty interesting character.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was fun to be around. He had a lot of really important things to say, and he had an audience.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we were his audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
So that was fun.
Yeah, so let's do that right now. Let's turn the camera and the mic on Joe.
Moved all over Ontario, and now I'm here in Peterborough.
Yeah.
So I'm doing public speaking here in Peterborough and stuff like that. So I try to help my community that I live in.
Yeah.
And be a part of them and help them as much as I can, as what little ability I can have.
So, Joe, when you were young, did you live on Aboriginal land? No, you always lived off reserve.
Yeah, yeah. I was adopted out.
Adopted out.
I was adopted out. I was at an adoption home.
Yeah.
That was very abusive.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry.
being in a residential school was rough, but being in an adopted home that my adopted father was an alcoholic and a sex offender.
Oh boy.
My adopted mother was an alcoholic, but she was also a bingo fanatic. So she was always gone out spending the money.
Trying to get the money, eh?
Yeah, trying to keep her drinking going.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting involved with that, and I ended up getting molested in there and everything else and stuff like that. I believe that what kept me going was the positive that was put into me.
Yeah.
You know, I believed in myself. They're going to take advantage of me because I'm native and I'm challenged. So with fetal alcohol syndrome.
Right.
So what happened was they took advantage of that. They ended up doing everything they can to me, and mentally, physically, emotionally. But I turned out in a positive way because I said, I'm gonna break the cycle.
Yeah. You broke it.
And I broke it. And now here I am. I'm a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
I'm traveling all over Ontario
Yeah.
and in Canada.
Yeah.
I've done public speaking in conferences, in jails. I've been to the Kingston Pen twice, doing public speaking there. I've been to Winnipeg about 3 times there, doing big conferences.
You're like Johnny Cash and everywhere, man.
That's right. I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and now I'm going to start doing it here and try to help my community here and show them that there's a positive way of doing things.
Yeah.
If you do not let the negative control you, you got to control the negative.
Right.
And that's where a lot of people have a hard time dealing with. Is dealing with the negative because they let the negative control them instead of them controlling the negative.
You told me just when we met a couple minutes ago. You told me about the accident.
Yeah.
You know, tell me again what happened.
Well,
put you in the chair.
Okay, what put me in the chair was I ended up walking. I was on my way to church. I was going to do a testimony at the church.
Yeah.
But that day, it was on a Sunday morning. I started to go to church. I went across the street, and this snowplow came around the corner, not knowing that I was right there.
Oh man.
And he had the green light too. It was like a green light for the both of us, but he should have known.
Pedestrians, yield for pedestrians. You
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't even know that I was there because he had the big blade up in the air. And so when he came around the corner, he couldn't see where I was.
And he hit you.
And he hit me, and he died. I grabbed onto the blade, and I got swung underneath the truck and dragged down the street 200 meters.
200 meters.
200 meters down the street.
Oh, Lord.
But luckily, there was a cop at the light that saw what happened, and he cut in front of the truck and told them that there was a body in front of him.
Yeah.
And he didn't even know that he hit me.
Wow. So you just had neck surgery, didn't you?
Yeah. I just had neck surgery done June the 27th. I stayed in there until the whole month, for 1 whole month in the hospital. I just got out in August.
Yeah.
Out of the hospital in August, on August the 10th that I left. Now I got to go back in January in the new year and start on my lower back.
Yeah. More surgery.
More surgery. So I got 1 more surgery to go, and I don't want to go for it because this is the 4th surgery I've already had.
Wow.
I've already had 4 surgeries.
So you talked about the negative and the positive, and you've had to very much learn how to keep finding something good out of something horrible, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you let your negative control you, you have no control to your negative.
Yeah.
So you got to think positive, even though things might look bad.
Yeah.
Always think good about it.
Yeah.
Because something will happen.
Yeah.
The guy ended up committing suicide because he thought he
I'm so
killed
sorry.
me.
Yeah.
He thought he lost his job.
Yeah.
He lost his job. He lost everything, and he ended up committing suicide after a year
Wow.
because he couldn't deal with it.
So,
No, that he just, you
does
know,
that eat away at you?
it does, but I try not to let it
Yeah.
control me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't take a bad thing
Yeah.
and let it control me. I control it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no way that it was ever your fault.
So it was not his fault.
And he couldn't even see you.
That's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't him. It was nobody's fault, really.
Yeah.
It's just an accident that happened.
Yeah. One of those dark twists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I look at it this way. I feel bad for him that he had to do what he did to himself. But
Yeah.
I look at it this way. I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm still going.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it was, I'm still going. Even though I'm in a wheelchair,
Yep.
I try to get that positivity out.
Yeah.
Think positive, act positive, talk positive, you get positive results.
Yeah.
And that's how I deal with it.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. Negative, I don't let negative control me. I got to control my negative
Yeah.
and what's around me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are angry at the world, but I look at it this way. What are you doing for the world?
Right.
You know? And there's another thing that I like to do is just to talk to people and just be with them for who they are. They're a human being like I am.
Yeah.
Just because you're white and I'm a little bit darker than you doesn't mean I'm no different than you. We all breathe the same air.
That's right.
We all eat the same food. We all live in a nice place. You know,
We all come from the same creator.
that's it.
Yeah.
We come from God. So why should we destroy God?
Right.
And why should we hate him for what he has given us? He has given us a beautiful garden and we ruined it. God created this earth as a beautiful place, but we came along and he created us and we ruined our environment by getting greedy and getting everything else like that. I look at it this way, the Bible, if you can walk the talk in a Bible, you know, how else can you go wrong?
Yeah. It all
Because-
comes back to loving God and
That's it.
loving my neighbor, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
For who they are.
When I think about some of the symbols that I see here, okay,
Yeah.
I think about three things. Number one, you have an encampment. There is a sense of community. We need to watch out for each other, right?
That's it.
And so this gathering of tents and shopping carts says this is community.
It is.
Then the tent, I think about, when the Apostle Paul talks about this body is a tent.
Yeah.
It's a temporary residence for God's Spirit until we put on immortality.
That's right.
And then, but the symbol that kind of is just chewing on my head today is the shopping cart.
Right.
The shopping cart is created as this thing to gather our abundance into.
That's it. That's very true.
And yet, any city you go to, people are using shopping carts to store whatever they can
Yeah.
just to survive.
That's it.
And it's a striking symbol, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
We are gathering information from one another. I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from me.
Yep.
He's doing the same thing. Your partner is doing the same thing. He's learning from me as much as I am learning from him.
Yeah.
But if somebody taught me how to do what he did,
Yeah.
instead of saying, oh, you can't do that job. You don't know how to do that job. Well, how do you know if I don't know? If you don't give me the chance.
That's right. That's right.
So what we got to do is like take that negative and turn it around.
Yeah.
And say, okay, you say you can do the job, then show me.
You shoot me and Kevin.
Huh?
Shoot a picture of me and Kevin.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh, all right.
This is the zoom here.
Okay.
Okay? So that goes back and forth
Okay.
and pan tilt.
All right.
Okay? So
All right.
there you go. Now you're a cameraman.
All right. There you go.
You're a
Yes.
cameraman. He can do it.
Yes. Very good picture of it.
All right.
Yeah.
We're a couple of old cooters, eh?
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's like, for me to be a cameraman,
Yeah.
and nobody's ever taught me how to become a cameraman,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to learn?
Yeah. And how do we know that God hasn't given you a set of
gift.
eyes to look and see things that go through the camera and you capture stuff, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole I say. I just
Yeah.
don't bother with you. It's like,
Okay, you were a cameraman for a few minutes there. Now I want you to be a director, okay?
oh, really?
So what I want you to do is say, and cut, okay?
All right.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
And cut. Done. Thank you for watching the show. Come back again next week for part 2. Live in Peterborough.
So, Bill, as you and I are engaged in putting this episode together, we're sitting in the comfort of your basement studio, and I know when I go home tonight where I'm going to sleep. You know where you're going to sleep. We know that we trust that the heat is going to stay on, and that we're going to wake up tomorrow morning without any threat.
Right.
But as we were sitting in that parking lot talking with Joe, waiting for our permission to enter Tent City, it made me think about how, we sometimes, just as it would be uncomfortable for someone just to walk into your house, or that you don't know.
Right.
The same thing is true on the streets. If somebody's living in a tent or in a cardboard box or sleeping on a bench, you're entering their space, and it's so important to know how to enter and be appropriate.
We don't think of those things, do we?
No, and it's also just so easy for us to have a perspective on people that are homeless and to only assume the worst.
Right.
I think now Joe in that segment, Joe has a place to live, and but he chooses to be out among the people that he knows best,
Right.
and to be a light, to let his light shine where he knows to let it shine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now in the next part here, we're going into Tent City, and we're gonna meet Will. And hear about his bike recycling and also his struggle. And Scott and Leanne are going to talk to us a little bit about just some of the harsh realities of being a person that may not be able to be accommodated in a shelter. And I'm still struck by this time that we spent there.
I'm struck by his intelligence.
Who, Will?
Will.
Yeah.
Intelligent young man, analytical,
Yeah.
and wouldn't be out of place in a boardroom
Yeah.
of a company.
Yeah.
It was overwhelming for me to see that. Sometimes I think you have a picture in your mind that they're not with it. They're not, they're going to be whacked out of their mind, whatever. He was really to the point, and even in his little operation that he has with the bicycles and that, he knows that he's got certain parts that he can sell to get money for drugs.
Yeah.
And he knows what value the bikes have on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of times I thought, man, that guy could be in a boardroom.
Yeah, we have to be able to see the potential in all people because God sure does.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of stories of redemption waiting to happen.
Absolutely.
And just watching back on the footage and thinking about what we're going to see here with Will just reminds me again, pray for Will.
That's her tent over there. Hey, you mean the other person from the green tent?
No, I'm yelling at Brooke from across the road to tell her that fucking she ain't going with her to pick up what she has to get.
Right.
My money.
The person from the
But I'll
green
never get
tent.
my money.
Evelyn's wearing the sweater that we just gave her.
They're not! They're talking to Lori! They're gonna be asking her questions! They want people to come and fucking tell people how it is, because people don't fucking know.
Right. They want to know the truth about why people are here.
Because people are fucking assholes and fucking shelters, and they restrict you, and once you get a restriction, you're fucked for 30 days to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then you don't get food, you don't get water, you don't get nothing.
Washrooms.
You don't even get a fucking tent or anything over you. You have to hope, pray to God that you're fortunate enough to get something.
That's right.
And then you have to worry about everybody fucking stealing your shit.
Yeah. And the next
Or
morning
burn
you're
your
watching
tent down.
somebody. Next morning you're watching somebody who is wearing your stuff,
Yeah.
but they didn't steal it.
Yeah.
Right.
Culver?
Yeah, I was from Fort Perry, originally.
Yeah. So I have a podcast Bill and I work on, and it's basically it's called Sidewalk, Skyline podcast, and it's about God at work in Canadian cities, like on the street. And anyways, just
God freaks me out sometimes, even in the drug world.
Yeah.
He's still there.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So just explain what you mean by that. Like
Oh, I don't know.
where do you
Sometimes,
see him?
well, you just see people get their comeuppance, right? If they screw someone else over.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And some people are nice to you, even though you don't really feel like you deserve it. I don't know. Some people are assholes, and they just make you feel like you're different, or like you don't deserve to be on the same street as them. You know.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to be violent. It really does. When people say that kind of shit, because you already feel shitty about yourself, and then they add to it. Like Friday and Saturday night is the worst when you're walking downtown and everyone's having fun.
Yeah.
And it sucks when they see you and you're high because you're just another tweaker, you know. So and it sucks to get lumped in with them, with the people who fucking steal and whatever else, because there's a lot of people that just they work their asses off to get high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a girl who collects cans. I collect furniture sometimes and sell it, whatever. And there's a lot of bins around town that you can get stuff
Are
in.
these your bikes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just need a new tube for that tire, and then I'll be able to either ride it or sell it to someone.
Yeah.
Honestly, most of the time I just sell the shit because it's gonna get stolen anyway.
Yeah.
Like really. And then you see the person with it, and they just say, "Oh, I bought it off someone else." Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But this is what's cool about like what Will and others do. Like if you look over there's all kinds of cans. Like they're collecting stuff, and then they'll take it down for cash to recycle. You know, so they're actually like, see, here he is recycling. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, and so they're.
You're giving the bike a second chance.
Yeah, well,
instead
and,
of it being thrown out. Yeah.
And they're industrious. They're not just sitting around. I mean, on their hands.
kind of
We get
a
high,
metaphor.
but we're not idiots.
Yeah,
That's
well,
good,
like I mean, you're working for your reward.
But it's
I mean,
not worth
wouldn't
it.
Be the same
With
as
all
mine,
the walking and shit you do think to yourself, I should just get a fucking job because it would be so much easier and I'd be less tired.
Yeah.
But and then people like they'll look at you and say, "Oh, why are you homeless?" and stuff, but they don't realize how hard it is to keep your clothes clean and everything else. That's a full-time job.
So how hard is it to find an apartment in Peterborough?
Well, I've gone to a few places, but it's hard for me to keep the appointments with the drug use and such.
Yeah.
And well, they've helped me a little bit. Like they help you look, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
apartments are pretty expensive.
yeah, they are.
Like,
Well,
so
a couple
you're-
of my friends that are in rooms right now, then they're paying $700. That's ridiculous for what they get.
For a room.
And Ontario Works gives you how much a month?
$450 for rent.
So you
And
got to
then-
make up the difference.
Yeah, or you got to use the other money they give you that you're supposed to spend on food and
Yeah.
soap and stuff, right?
So there's not enough
No.
to make it work even when you are housed. That's,
No, but what are they going to do, man? I understand. You can't just give out free money to everybody or nobody would work.
Yeah.
Like somebody has to go to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, I got to go, guys.
Hey,
Okay, thanks.
nice meeting you, Will.
Appreciate it. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So that just to help Will, like this is not going to be not widely like it's mainly. I told him it's mainly religious community.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. It's not.
Yeah. So how's Jay and Sarah over there?
They're feeling really bummed. So what they're saying is that everything has gotten wet, and then so they wanted to hang it out. But if they hang it out and the city comes, then it's more to pack up, and they just can't get it dry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I call it the dance, but once a week in Peterborough, if over my shoulder here is called the Overflow. There are 3 shelters in town: the youth shelter, the women's shelter, the men's shelter. This is a 4th, and it's called the Overflow, which obviously means the other ones are full all the time. In the winter, that will be full, and this becomes the overflow of the overflow. And what they're seeking really is community. They got each other's backs in some ways. In a lot of ways, they got each other's backs, and they watch out for each other. They watch each other's stuff. But once here comes the city council in that little car. Don't show the video. But so once a week, usually Thursday mornings around 8:30, the city will send out workers and a dump truck and a front end loader, and they'll send police backup. And the police stand around while the city guys with their gloves pick up stuff. And so if your tent is not moved, if Will's tent isn't moved from this location, as soon as they see the city come along, it'll be picked up by a front end loader and thrown, and everything he owns will land in the garbage. So he wants to go get his bikes, fixed today, and he's got a plan to get the one bike working and trade the other one in for parts and get a tube. And he's quite industrious, but he can't leave here because if, while he's gone for that hour, the city comes along, everything he owns, his home, will be thrown in a dumpster. And then he's got to start all over again. So then he's out sleeping under the stars in the end of November, or the end of September. And like, it's just, you don't, most people don't understand the frustration. The other thing that I used to not understand is we have, there's a breakfast program that's happening 2 blocks from here at Salvation Army. 5 blocks away, within a 10-minute walk, lunch is served between 1 and 2, a really good hot lunch at one roof. However, for Will to make that trip, he's got to leave his everything he owns.
Yeah.
So he's going to skip a hot meal so that he can have a place to sleep again tonight. Like, you make these decisions, and that's why when Leanne and I come around and we got Starbucks sandwiches and waters, it's not much, but at least it's something to keep them going. Yeah. And we have that connection with them. We're meeting a practical need, but we wish we could do more. But I mean, you have no idea the frustration that they have just to survive, and they're illegal here. Having a tent in Peterborough is illegal, and let me be clear, the city does not want to be here cleaning up. Those guys hate their job when they have to come. They don't want to evict anybody, and the cops don't want to be here. But they have to do it because the law's got to be enforced, and it gets enforced every week. And sometimes they'll mix it up. A couple of weeks ago, they came 3 mornings in a row just to make it uncomfortable. like, and just to send the message you don't belong here. But where do they belong? They don't belong anywhere. And the message, like you heard from him, is you're not valuable anymore. You're a piece of dirt. You know, we need to sweep you up off the sidewalk. And that's not the intention either of city workers, or of city hall, or of police. But unfortunately, that's the message that comes across.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a frustration for everybody all the way around. So it's we've got to get housing, just practical, and so that's where we're working on tiny homes.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at the tiny homes a little later, and I think that's a great strategy to get a step closer to the way things should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bill, I had no idea how hard it is to be a survivalist on the streets.
Mm.
You know, when I think about people having a backpack and a tent, and you know, I think, well, how hard can it be? You go find some place where you can set up a tent, but it's not easy. There's a lot of forces working against you.
Yeah.
And just the struggle just to stay warm and dry every day and
safe,
fed and
because
safe.
there's a predatory element of it as well. You know, where there is a sense of community, but there are predators in the ranks who are desperate to get things to sell so they can, you know, feed the hunger in their veins. And so, you know, they not only have to look for food, but they have to look for comfort and safety as well. And it's something I've never really thought about, you know. So
part of helping people at that end of the spectrum, you know, who are truly homeless, is getting them stabilized by having shelter. A shelter of their own, a space to call their own.
Right.
You know, even if it's renting a room and you got a secure lock on the door, you can start to regroup. You can start to think about something other than just moment-to-moment survival.
Right.
And the housing first strategy employed by a lot of cities in Canada hinges on this idea that if you can get people to have a warm, dry place to call their own, and have the right people in providing support and social work, and in the case of street level advocacy, having spiritual and religious care.
That's so important.
This is part of the path off of the street into something more stable.
Right.
And so, you know, I felt the desperation talking to the team, because winter's coming, and well, as we're listening to the episode now, winter's here, and every year somebody is found frozen to death in every city, and many times more than one, and that's heart-wrenching. So in Peterborough, they're working on some steps to start the journey off the street into more enduring shelter. And so this is where we met Chris.
Yeah.
And got to see the sleeping cabins.
Yeah.
And Calvary Church in Peterborough, they had a space on their property where they had kind of the model home, right?
Absolutely.
You know, you think about new housing developments, and they always got the model home. Well, they have a model home for a sleeping cabin. So let's go and explore the sleeping cabin and talk to Chris. Chris, I'm Kevin, and nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And so you're working with Scott in street level advocacy.
Correct.
How'd that come about?
Well, I met Scott, I would say, back in January, and Scott had basically come into my life when my mother was passing. She was in palliative care and up in Peterborough. And I reached out to another friend, Jurgen, who was pastoring and helping at the Salvation Army.
Okay.
So then when I reached out to him, letting him know about my mother, he reached out to Scott, who in turn reached out to me, met my mom, talked to my mom before she passed, and then we just developed a relationship to where I would say a year afterwards, after my mom passed, he finally got in touch with me saying, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. He was like, let's go for a coffee. And then he laid all this out on the table about being an urban missionary, wanting to be out on the streets. He was a pastor for 30 years. He did a really wonderful job there, but he felt his calling was more.
Yeah.
And he wanted to have people that had lived experience and had some relatability to being on the street. And that was me. Unfortunately, I was on the street for a number of years, under bridges, under benches, having to really struggle and fight just for a little something. And then eventually reaching out to the right people, having a little bit of self-confidence and some self-esteem, building myself up bit by bit. I was able to reach out to the right people, get the right connections, and then next thing you know, I'm off the street, in a room, from the room to a house.
Wow.
I have my own furniture refinishing business now.
Wow.
I get to see my kids every weekend. We have a beautiful relationship. Everything's really falling together for me.
That's
after everything kind of I thought was hopeless.
Yeah.
So I just really stuck to it. I had Scott help me out. I had the street level obviously to back me up. And I just been going out every day, handing out sandwiches, waters, whatever those individuals need that I know are hard to get or come by.
So how do you feel about your life now?
It's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. And praise be to God, if it really wasn't for the glory of God helping me open my eyes and see really where my despair was. It's like day and night.
There's a difference between do-gooders and peacemakers.
Oh, 100%.
You know, and do-gooders want to just drop in, maybe hand out some water bottles and say, I
want to smile for the camera.
Smile for the camera,
right? Look at me. Right? I want to be behind the scenes. I want to be more of the person who's
peacemaker gets into the problem.
You keep saying peacemaker, but in my mind, I feel like I'm a soldier of God.
Yeah.
Right? I'm here to do battle against the devil, who I know is always constantly in these individuals' heads and constantly trying to push them down as I'm trying to bring them up.
Yeah, there's a spiritual warfare.
Oh yes,
it's unbelievable.
And with Scott coming in to my life at the time he did, it was almost divine intervention. Yeah, it was. I would totally feel that if it wasn't for really me reaching out to Scott at that particular time, and him unveiling this, this wonderful street level mission, the street level officer.
He was the peacemaker.
100%. Yes.
So we're standing in this
tiny cabin.
Tiny cabin. It's a lot of people talk about tiny houses, but this is basically a sleeping cabin.
Sleeping cabin. This would be like a phase one. So phase one would be having at least 9 of these established in Peterborough, so that way the people are on the streets and in tents in the coldest of winter. This will be, the next option. This would be something for them. And then phase 2 would actually be a tiny cabin, like a tiny home, where there's a washroom and a kitchen, and it's a little bit more stable. It's a little bit more of the security.
10 times the cost to put.
Unfortunately, it is a little bit more money, but it's more long term though, and it's something that somebody could work towards. And
So a group of these tiny, let's call them sleeping cabins, could be set up somewhere with maybe another building that has washrooms and showers, or any kind of cooking facility or something.
Correct.
But then this gives person just real basic, comfortable shelter.
Absolutely, it's a little bit of their security blanket, which they don't really have, and it's something that they can look forward to. Knowing that they don't have to go to the streets or go to the tents. They're not going to be like every other day kicked out, chased away, and whatnot. So this is really a good transitional period or section for them to go from one spot to another. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well. You're a good soldier of Jesus Christ, so keep it up. And that team that's growing there is becoming just really diverse and powerful. Like there's some really great workers coming together there.
Yeah, she impressed me with her zeal.
Yeah.
You know, she was just never say never. And you know, her background was rough around the edges, and you know, she's serving the Lord now, and she's just sweet.
She is
You know,
sweet.
it's the only thing I can describe her. The only word that I can come up with is just sweet.
Yeah. One of the things that I hope that happens as we explore God at Work in Canadian cities is that there will be people who hear an episode of Sidewalk Skyline podcast and they'll say, you know what? Is God speaking to me in some way to either begin to go to where He is on the streets of our city, or to get behind people that are doing this kind of work? And so in the show notes, we're going to have links so that you can find people like Scott Cooper and actually go online and donate and support.
So God's
their
speaking
ministry.
to a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's easy to ignore, but if He really wants you, then He'll get you.
He'll make a way.
And who was it that said 2/3 of God's name is go?
Yeah,
Right?
that's great.
So it's time for maybe some of us to go.
Yeah.
You know, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. That means hitting the streets right now. And there's such an overwhelming need right now for people to get there. And even if you don't know what you're doing, go down and learn how to interact with those on the streets.
I'm so glad that we did go to Peterborough.
Yes.
And I want us to now listen to what that calling looks like.
Yeah.
And Leanne does a great job of really identifying why she's there. So tell us about it, Leanne.
At what point in life did you suddenly decide, this is what I want to do?
It's a long story. It's very roundabout. So
How do you go from being a good little Bible college student to being out on the streets of Peterborough? That's the
I
question.
actually didn't understand why I was in Bible college until I met Scott. Then I'm like, oh, I get you, God.
Yeah.
I really had no idea why He was calling me to this kind of like life and job and things, because I didn't visualize myself inside a church.
Right.
So the long around story is I grew up in the streets of Peterborough.
Yep.
I lived a rough life.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got sober and got my life together and all that stuff in my mid-20s, I did a stint of being homeless. So I know what that's like to have no home, right? And I got it together in my mid-20s, and I went back to school in my early 30s in social work. So I thought, okay, that's what I need to do. I'm better. I got my life together.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to help others get their life together. And that just didn't work out. So I ended up taking a job with the school board and working with kids, and that was wonderful. And I was there for quite some time. And then in my mid-30s, I finally answered the door. I think He was I shouldn't say I think. I know He was always chasing me.
Yep.
But I just wasn't listening. And so then I became a Christian, and this moved very quickly. So I started going to church, then I was baptized within the first year, and then by the time 3 years I was enlisted in Bible college, so I actually was only baptized 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's really cool because, all of the things that happened in your life before were not wasted.
No.
They became a teaching tool in your life, right?
Yeah, and then through college, then my husband and I used to kind of do the drive around on cold days and hot chocolates, and so working with people who are in the gaps has always been my heart. I just didn't know how to go there. And then Scott showed up at school and and spoke and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to be. I actually withdrew from an internship that I had already had in motion because I just had that moment where you feel that rate in the pit of your belly where I'm like, oh wait, that was the wrong way to go, and I need to be now going this way.
So did you do your internship with Scott?
So I did it through my home church at Norwood, right? And they were able to make this with partnership with Masters, this really unique internship where I was part-time at my church and part-time with Scott.
Yeah.
So it was very cool.
Oh, that is.
And as the internship ended, I like worked up all the courage that I had to say, I think I'm supposed to partner with you. What do you think? And now we're here, right? Where we're going. So.
Well, that's the thing is, you know, guys like Scott that are committed to this kind of work. I mean, you could lead an army of people to be involved in this kind of ministry, right?
There are people asking on the Facebook page all the time, how do we get involved? And you want to get people involved, but it's also really sensitive. You've built relationships that could be easily broken.
This isn't an opportunity for do-gooders who just want to feel good because they're helping. This is, you know, you want to be a peacemaker.
Yeah. One of my best conversations about 3 weeks ago with a group of our guys, right, that, you know, have been in this life for a long time.
Yeah.
And the way that we conversed for them to say, I already know you know how we feel, right?
Yeah.
Because of my life experience, because of where I came from, I'm able to connect in a way that they get, which I think is helpful. Not everybody has to come from my life, but I find for me that's what is helpful.
Well, you don't have a lot of illusions about.
No, I know exactly what we're doing around here.
You know the way things are because you've been there.
And it's a different kind of relationship you build when you get it.
You know broken, and you also know healing.
I do. Yeah. I always say that I went through all of the therapy and the mental health. I came from, you know, like trauma, right? Obviously, and I said that, you know, the counseling fixed my mind. But I wasn't whole and my heart wasn't fixed until I found Jesus, right? Yeah. Jesus fixed my insides. Yeah. And then I became a whole person. So, yeah.
I wandered away for a few minutes. Did you tell them about your training, your formal training?
The social work and
So that's kind of cool for us, bro. When you think about now I have, like, you know, one of the concerns that social services would have about me is that I'm a middle-aged white guy and touring around in my truck and no accountability. So now, without even realizing it, the Lord brings me a woman and a social, like, trained as a social worker. So the credibility goes up.
Well, we weren't done with Peterborough. We have a couple more episodes coming based on conversations that we had in Peterborough. And our next episode, we're going to be talking to David Ibalobi. And David, forgive me if I pronounced your name wrong. It's a beautiful Nigerian name. And David and his family have moved to Peterborough. He's enrolled in Canada Christian College. And God put in his heart a dream to move to Peterborough to start a church among the homeless. Now, that hasn't really formed yet, but it's interesting that God calls them to a place where the need is great. And David, I'll just give you a little teaser for the next episode. When he was born in Nigeria, he and his family were Muslim. His father, in fact, was a imam, a teacher of the Quran. And there was another imam that was known in the community as a seer. And when parents would have children, they would bring their newborn child or their young child to the seer. The seer would pray and then, in essence, prophesy over the child something about their nature or what would become of them. And so, I mean, as Christians, it's hard for us to imagine how God would speak through another religion, but in this case, He did, because Bill, do you remember what the seer told David's dad and mom about this boy?
I do, but you're going to tell everybody.
No, you tell them. The seer prays, and then he looks at David and he says,
he was either going to be an evangelist or
A Christian. He was going to be a Christian pastor, or a witch doctor.
a witch doctor. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Could you imagine this Muslim imam having the seer say that to him, and the seer was laughing when he told him. So that's quite a story and the beginning of quite a journey in David's life. So join us again. Until next time, I'm Kevin Rogers
And Bill Riley.
and this is Sidewalk Skyline Podcast.